Thank you for watching the World Community Magazine's Hour of Power Live on Facebook with your host Edward McQueen and April Garner Davis.
Oh man, I like this live stuff. This live stuff that makes all the difference in the world. April.
Yes.
First of all, good afternoon or good evening to our viewing guests, and I'm your host Ed McQueen, the co-host, and Miss April Garner Davis, the other co-host. So, and we've been comfortable for a while, and in fact, we've been comfortable in our conversations for a long time. I guess being on this end of the spectrum, and we've made I'm sure some of our viewers uncomfortable. Well, since we've been, I think for the most part, we made everybody comfortable. Okay, so let's get at the threshold of making some people uncomfortable. What do you think?
I think sometimes you have to have uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah, you have to do that, especially when you're talking about Black history, not African American history. Okay, you're not going probably won't hear this out through our broadcast today. But it's Black history, and that's the subject that's out for today. Our topic is, why does it make so many people feel uncomfortable when we start talking about Black history? Well, it's not to demean anybody else, and it's not to make anybody else the feeling be hurt. If you understand, and if we're conveying the information properly or adequately, then you're going to feel neutral. You won't be feeling bad. You're just trying to understand if you are a rational person. Okay, but if your mind is already made up, then we can't expect anything otherwise. Okay, so having said that, we have some guests today that's going to kind of further the discussion and make it lively. Like I said, some people may feel uncomfortable, but we're here to assure you that it's no use in feeling uncomfortable about this. So I'll pass this on to April. Let you take it on from there, my sister.
Okay. Well, first of all, we'd like to thank our viewing audience, those of you who are with us every single week, and those of you who are tuning in for the first time. We'd love for you to join the conversation, and it's real easy. All you have to do is post your comments or questions in the chat here on Facebook or on YouTube, and we will moderate those questions and comments for our special guests. The conversation that we're going to have tonight, as I call him, Brother Edward, as I spoke about in the beginning, it stems from what happened on Juneteenth. After a post by the city of Myrtle Beach that basically announced that they had closed their offices in observance of federal holiday, Juneteenth. And throughout that day, when there was supposed to be lots of celebrations and, commemorating the actual holiday and the meaning of the holiday, the significance of the holiday, there seemed to be more of an argument. I won't even call it a debate. It was more of an argument openly and outwardly on social media, resulting from that post. And so as we thought about the significance of what happened in that exchange, our conversation kind of turned to the why. Why does it make certain groups of people uncomfortable? Why is there, such resistance when it comes down to acknowledging our history, acknowledging the significance of contributions of historic figures and historical events and things of that nature. And so tonight we're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive in the form of a roundtable conversation. We do welcome your questions and comments. This is going to be less of an interview of our special guests and more of a conversation with our special guests. And tonight we have Dr. Frank Gause and we have Charles Wright joining us. I'm going to introduce both of them onto the screen now. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. We really do appreciate it. And so before we get started, we would like for each of you to kind of give just a briefing of who you are and why well, I know why we chose you, but maybe if you just kind of talk a little bit about your backgrounds, that will give everyone who's viewing and watching an idea of why you're here to help us have this conversation. So we'll start with Mr. Charles. Mr. Wright.
Hi, I'm Charles Wright. I'm a native of Conway, South Carolina. I had the privilege of studying and becoming a professor of art, and I worked first at Coastal Carolina University for 20 some years, and then had the privilege of going out to Western Illinois University to chair Department of Art there. And I ended my career in Grand Rapids, Michigan, as a dean of the College of Visual Arts. And in that capacity, I had the opportunity to work with. I was in leadership with the president and the dean of students, and I had the opportunity to work with developing policy and procedures and all of that for DEI initiatives, enrollment initiatives, the kinds of things that that allowed me to get into at the administrative level and this decision-making level, where issues of diversity and inclusion were a part of it. So I feel like I had an opportunity to learn and to experience and to understand and know what it was like to be at a level where decisions are being made about things involving issues of diversity. Mm-hmm. So, that's my background. I'm retired now, and I simply love being a part of community engagement.
Awesome. All right, and thank you for joining us tonight. And Dr. Boz, and you're muted. It looks like you're muted from my end. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Good evening, April. I'm originally from Horry County, born and raised in Loris, South Carolina. Graduated from Loris High. Spent some time in Orangeburg, attending South Carolina State University, but I would finish my undergraduate degree at the University of South Carolina in Columbia. I received an undergraduate degree in African American Studies, and later would pursue getting a master's degree in teaching, particularly in social studies, the secondary education, and then later a PhD in foundations of education. I spent a great deal of time in Columbia. A part of my work centered around documenting the history of Black people during the Civil Rights era, when I worked with the Center for Civil Rights History and Research with the executive director, Dr. Bobby Donaldson. And we spent a great deal of time doing oral interviews, archiving personal collections, as well as doing presentations and curating educational resources for K-12 as well as higher education. I later would relocate back to the area in 2023. My wife and I and children, we have 2 kids, and we both work at Coastal Carolina University. She's in the higher education department, and I am in teacher education, where I focus on, I'm a professor of middle level social studies and teaching methods, but I also am the coordinator for the Call Me Mr. program, which has a particular emphasis of getting more teachers into the classroom in the areas that are in the greatest need of teachers. And so some initiatives that I'm currently involved with, one being the Palmetto Works Children's Defense Fund Freedom School. It's in its 2nd year, and it is housed at Impact Church in Conway. And we have roughly 36 young scholars where we teach them the love of learning and literacy, but the curriculum is built around the civil rights movement. And so in addition to that, I am working on documenting the history of folks in Horry County who attended some of the historically Black high schools, and grade schools, and people in the community when it relates to Black Business District throughout Horry County. So those are a few things that I'm currently involved with, and I'm glad to be on the show today.
We're certainly glad to have you. So let's kick off this conversation and talk about, I don't know if we can call it the elephant in the room, or if it's, I almost feel like we know the answers to a lot of the questions that people have and even questions that I have. But I think what was most intriguing to me and what's always intriguing to me is just the pushback that we are constantly experiencing when it comes down just to celebrating Black culture, Black celebrations of our history, our contributions to society. The fact that, and we touched on this a little bit earlier, Dr. Gauze, those contributions and our historic footprint is in jeopardy because there are a lot of people who are denying the history, who are dismissing the history. And we sit side by side with people every day, all day, and it has caused me, as an example, to just wonder, like, who am I sitting next to? Who are the people that I think I know, certainly love or like or whatever, indifferent. But when I see that these types of politically motivated reactions to Black celebrations easily surface in certain people, it just makes me wonder why it's so hard for someone to simply embrace that our celebration, our contribution is significant. It's meaningful for us. And if it's meaningful to me, then if you're my brother or my sister in Christ or whatever you want to say, then you should just respect that and not necessarily feel emboldened or empowered to turn it into such a racist diatribe, which is what happens a lot of times. And what I've witnessed in that exchange, just simply from the city of Myrtle Beach saying we're observing Juneteenth and our offices are closed. There were people who just, wanted to make sure that they were heard and would not let it go. And Juneteenth is just one holiday where this happens. There are other holidays that are connected to us. But I don't understand why that is like the thing to do and why people feel like it's necessary. And maybe it's that I don't know why, or maybe it's that it's still hard to believe in 2025 that it's, that this kind of thing's happening. But, what I would like for us to talk about is, foundationally, we talked about this earlier, Dr. Gauze, and I'm going to ask you to kind of kick off the conversation. But foundationally, we kind of know where it comes from. I don't think that people understand the importance of being educated about our own history so that we can be self-aware, but also self-confident as we try to navigate these tough situations and these big moments that depict racism at its highest. So foundationally, what do we need to know as a people to understand why this is happening? That's my question.
I would like to say that it begins with Sankofa, which is a Swahili term that really highlights looking back. The Sankofa bird is a bird that has been diagrammed as looking back with an egg on its back. And the purpose for the illustration is to highlight that you have to go back and fetch your history. It's so critically important for understanding where you are and where you're going as it relates to your community. And so when thinking about Sankofa, Sankofa really highlights the importance of knowing your history, because one saying is, if a tree with no roots, it's really not going to survive. And so any group of people who lack their history will always have challenges and problems in their community and not really know what are the best avenues or approaches to address them. And so, in thinking about the Black community or the broader African diaspora, much of what we've had to endure in this country is the initiatives or the um, efforts to ensure that there is a disruption in Black people knowing and learning their history. And so when you look back at what are the reasons or where did this come from, it of course it starts with our arrival, our forced arrival here, and the purpose in which we were brought here, which was for economic gain. It wasn't because we were well liked. It was because of what we could provide and produce to create some wealth for white people. And so, um, from that, you would see the early emergence of what we now know as capitalism. And capitalism always emphasizes the gains that a few would have at the expense of others. And so, thinking about that origin, the easiest group to at that time um, establish as a lower class was Black people because of our physical attributes, our race, which is a made up construct, but our skin color. It's easy to identify who we are, and we're almost opposite. And when you think about how racism was constructed, racism birthed whiteness and privilege because white people were able to define themselves based on how they tried to prevent us from having the things in society that we have always been in the struggle to achieve and acquire. And so from that, we have been binded from the beginning. And when you look fast forward to, and I know this was a little extended answer, but when you fast forward and look at some of the things we're currently dealing with, it still is rooted in that beginning. This country was built on the backs of Black people. And at the beginning of this country was racism. So, in order to essentially um, eliminate these kinds of issues that stem from racism, you have to essentially examine the type of structure that has led to the creation of this country.
Mhm.
And so, economically, it is advantageous for the 1% or those that are currently benefiting from this administration in office. And when you think about that, then the things that come with the effects, such as uh, the lack of support or the lack of interest or um, the lack of desire to embrace or acknowledge the achievements of Black people, it comes with this idea that as long as there's friction between the people, the 1% can always benefit from that bickering and conflict. And so ultimately they're about gain, economic gain. And as long as the general population is at odds, there's still going to be gains. And so it is economically advantageous for them to keep us in conflict with everyone else. And so you see how more people nowadays are buying into this idea that Black contributions are not that valuable, or why are we acknowledging them? Why do they have holidays? And so it's not that they don't like Black culture; it sells. The issue is the attachment to Black people.
Mhm.
If it was where you could take Black culture and separate it from Black people, which is what happens when you look at the commercials on television and the ads that are used to generate wealth, not always do you see us in those commercials. Every now and then you do, but it's our music, our dances, our culture that is being used to advertise and buy or sell goods and services. And so when you think about overall why it's an issue, well, to keep us at odds is an advantage to continue this system of capitalism.
Yeah, I agree. So much to go on with that here. I absolutely agree. It is part of a larger strategy, I think, to dismiss the contributions of African Americans, and there's a purpose to it. In our current situation, there's an authoritarian government that wants to just simply deny history in general, not just the contributions of African Americans, but if you look at what's happening with this current administration, they're not just interested, they are focused on DEI initiatives, but these people are actually trying to rewrite American history. And the thing that I think is important for us to see is, and to make sure we get to be a part of the conversation, is when we talk about Juneteenth and these contributions of African Americans, the history of African Americans, it's not just African American history, it's American history. It should be central to the discussion of everything that has happened in America. And, but what it is a part of this attempt to divide us. It is a part of the mechanisms that are being used to keep, and that's what happened during slavery. There was always one group who had and one group who didn't have, or there was the house class and the field hands. But there was, and that was not something that African Americans did to themselves. That was a means of control, and I think that's what's happening now. We not just with African Americans, but I think that the lower classes are being pitted against the other classes, the middle classes, by the billionaire class. And so this attempt to deny Juneteenth and to deny Black history, to get angry sometimes when we have programming for African Americans, is a part of that whole structure, a theme of trying to deny and to divide. And so I think it's very important for us to, in this conversation, to make sure we establish the fact that African American history is as central to American history. Juneteenth is just as an important holiday as the 4th of July. And I said earlier, I was thinking about that quote of Frederick Douglass: "What is the 4th of July to a slave?" I mean, that conversation is that quote, I should say, it was actually very important to think about, because during the 4th of July, when this nation was born, we were enslaved. And so I think it's important for us to understand that, we need to make sure our history, the Juneteenth celebration, becomes a part of the central conversation of American history. And then we can understand that, in today's environment, even American history, even the mainstream American history, is being denied. And so we're part of that same diminution of just history in general.
So,
anyhow.
Well said, Dr. Wright, and thank you, Dr. Goss. Listening to this, it comes to mind that if we have problems, then we got to find solutions, right? Sometimes discussion sometimes can just be rather annoying, especially when it's not leading to anything. I'm off here. Let me see.
We can hear you.
Yeah, you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. All right, back on. Yeah. Yes. So, and some viewers probably look at that as a conversation as it's going to be prejudiced, probably as weak conversation, because they've been hearing that all their lives. Okay. And I can understand that. So what can the both of you develop? What kind of strategies do you think that can be developed that we might endeavor to kind of counteract what's so blatantly done today. Just like someone was saying earlier that people wanted to vent their statements and their issues when it comes to celebrating Black history. I'm going to keep using Black history. I have this issue with African American history, but not right. But that's another topic. But yeah. So what do you suggest for something that could do to get started with? And carry on from there in order to ensure that these holidays are well observed.
But if that question is for me, I think that I don't know.
Both of you.
I don't know. What specific things can be done other than what is being done. I mean, people are recognizing and celebrating Juneteenth. It is an official holiday. It took a long time for it to become official holiday. If you think about it, it was 2021 when Joe Biden signed it into as a federal holiday. It had been celebrated a long time in various parts of the country, and it had to move from Texas, where it first originated, to various states and cities across the nation, and it took years for it to be recognized. We can only do our best. I think that people can continue to celebrate. People can continue to have these. I think in my lifetime, it wasn't much discussion about it when I was growing up. I knew of the holiday, but I think over the past 10, 20 years, it's become a lot more known about. I think one of the strategies is that I think we can continue to talk about it. We can continue to celebrate. We can only do those things and ignore the chatter about why it should be and all of that. I think there are ways to educate people and having celebrations where you have connections to American history. I think the 4th of July is not too far away from it. I mean, make links to these various holidays across and emphasize the importance of it as a significant part of American history. I think those are the things that we can do, and not shy away from it. Continue to celebrate it, and I think that begins to educate people, and I think that's the only thing that we can do. One among the other things that we can do.
I think that when it comes down to the Juneteenth celebrations, what I see is that the attempts to have organized Juneteenth celebrations that are more than just come out, eat, come, buy something from a vendor, enjoy music. They seem to lack the true historical context of why there's even a Juneteenth. And, I think any kind of a Juneteenth celebration that is quote unquote organized without that component is not really a Juneteenth celebration. That's just, we have to gather and have fun, basically. And we see too much of that. And back to something that was said earlier, for whatever reason, within our community, we love to meet just to meet. And we love to meet just to talk about, what we think we should do, but then there's no movement, there's no follow-up, there's nothing that's truly organized to get us to, from point A to point Z. And I believe that educational aspect is what is truly missing, because if you asked anybody right now what the Juneteenth holiday is all about, I don't know that they could give you a complete sentence about what the Juneteenth holiday is all about. There was one person who posted and said, within that argument thread, that's what I'm going to call it, and this was, of course, in response to a non-person of color saying something, but I don't think that everybody knew that there's even a Juneteenth flag that is not the Pan American or Pan American flag. There's a Juneteenth flag, red, white, and blue, with the, the Star of Texas and a few other elements that are connected to it. And so, how, even as a culture, as a community, we have to understand what we're celebrating in order to truly defend it.
Sure.
And I think that we're getting so far away from the responsibility of educating our own, or even just, being interested in being educated about certain things, that it has kind of become the thing to do. Have a Juneteenth celebration. And, there's one popping up on every corner. In Conway, there's probably, well, when they first started, there was like 2 or 3 celebrations going on at one time in a very small radius. And it's like, so why aren't we unifying to bring our communities together to talk about why we are here and why we are even acknowledging Juneteenth and what the Biden administration has done. And then, and even a part of that is when Joe Biden made this a federal holiday, there were people within our community who were like, oh, he's just throwing us a bone because we need reparations. So there's so much that underpins how we move as a community. And again, I sometimes think that we don't always defend the right things, or we don't always have the right conversation or even argument about something that comes across our desk or our screens as a resistance or a pushback about our communities and or about our celebrations. And until we can get over that part, I believe that we're always going to be bombarded by these messages that are going to make us react in a defensive way to say the things, but then we're walking away. We're not doing the things to show other people that we really and truly honor our own holidays and honor the people who have these federal acknowledgments. And not just federal, it doesn't even have to be a federally acknowledged holiday. I mean, that, just the acknowledgments in general. So, there's a question that Ms. McIver posted: how do we best engage the community? Yeah, and we're talking about now our community. How do we best engage our community to become more educated about the things that we celebrate and why it's important for us to have the celebrations, but with the within the right spirit and without hidden agendas? How do we step out in a unified front to let other communities know that, like you said, it doesn't matter what you all say. We are celebrating us, and we know how to celebrate us, and this is why. And so that it becomes more of an informed conversation versus an argument all the time. It's exhausting. It really is exhausting when you think about it.
If I may speak to a couple of things that's been shared first by Brother Wright, I agree with you with regard to that we're doing a lot of the things that would help us continue to promote our history and preserve it. Coming together, celebrating these important dates such as Juneteenth, Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday, honoring Black History Month, promoting these things on platforms. I believe that a number of those things help us to continue to push what needs to be done further along the road by making sure that our history is always going to be entrenched, and it's our responsibility to ensure that others are being educated. I'd also like to speak to something, Sister Davis, that you highlighted, which could arguably create part of the reason why there is so much pushback or concern when we are not only being celebrated by having specific dates that acknowledge our history, but us participating and getting involved in various ways in celebrating ourselves. Is when you start doing that, you start thinking beyond that. Like, okay, we have 3 or 4 celebrations. Why not do one celebration? Because one of the dangerous things that can happen, which has always been a concern as it relates to our community, is for us as a race to come together and unify. When you think about the progressive changes that happened in this country, they were initiated by our community. Black people have been at the forefront and at the foundation of every major bill, law, or initiative to bring about democracy in this country. And so when you think about what we have as a collective and when we're working together to a common goal, we challenge fearlessly what those who have tried to prevent from happening as it relates to everyone else. We have made this country honor what they claim to have, which is a democracy. South Carolina in itself is a state with a very peculiar history. And I think for us, we're in a place where if you're in South Carolina, you've seen some of the best and some of the worst things to take place historically and even currently. Public education emerged out of South Carolina with the Constitution of 1868. This was a Black idea where when slavery ended and then there was a constitutional convention, many Black people took part in the political process and also took part in assuming political roles. And in doing so, helped write the Constitution of 1868. And in that Constitution, it was written that public education would be free and public to anyone, regardless of race, color, or background. So that idea emerged out of this state, but it became a national concept that has been adopted. When you think about desegregation, because as a result of those things taking place, there's always been this pushback to roll back historically all of the achievements. You see Jim Crow come in to keep us segregated and to keep us divided. And Briggs v. Elliott emerged in Clarendon County, which was one of the 5 court cases that make up Brown versus the Board of Education, which was designed to desegregate schools and public facilities. 2 major initiatives that emerged from this state. Now, when you think about how we are trying to move forward and ensure that our history is being taught, the most democratic space in this country is the public education classroom, which is why it's under attack. Public education is probably the number one place where you can bring anybody from any race, any background into one classroom and educate them. And because of that, it is what threatens this social structure and order. And so there is a massive effort to ensure that the curriculum that is being taught is being controlled. There is a intentional effort to ensure that our history is overlooked, suppressed, and omitted. So you see the book bans, you see many of the African-American history curriculums or courses not being offered or available, and not just in this state, but across the country. And so to prevent us from learning our history, it's not so much about us learning our history. They are also concerned, and I'm speaking of white folks, they're concerned about their children learning our history and learning the things that they have done historically so that they've been able to maintain social order and control. And with that, those concerns could lead to major changes which would tear down this structure. Public education in South Carolina. Let me make this one last point.
No, go ahead.
In South Carolina, we have a law that was instituted in 1989, but it was proposed in 1984 to teach Black history as a part of the history curriculum, essentially at the 8th grade level. And when it went into effect in 1989, there were funds that were earmarked to ensure that there are resources and materials that were created to teach Black history. You see the emergence from there, the Black History Calendar. You see other materials that were created. There's a book that was called African Americans in the Pounding of the State. So there were resources that were created to ensure that our history is taught. Now, where are we when you fast forward today? Well, there's an intentional effort to ensure that those things do not happen. Up until last year, there was, let me go back a little bit. Prior to this current superintendent of the state, there had been much more of a seamless process to apply for the funding that has been earmarked to create resources that will help teachers in public schools and private schools teach African American history. And last year and this year, there has been difficulty because the proposal opportunity has not been with transparency. It's not even been where it's been an opportunity that people could actually do because of the moving or sliding dates in which that window was created. Now we're talking about $250,000 that had been earmarked for the creation of resources and materials to ensure that teachers know what the history is and will have lesson plan units to be able to follow and teach the history. Now, where are these materials today? Well, the State Department has them on their website, the State Department of Education. Now, if you go look, you're going to have to look hard and be very intentional because they're not just easy to find. But the resources are there. And so it's been more of a check the box type of thing. The money is there. You can create the resources. We're not going to promote it, but that's been the experience. And so there are things that are available to teachers to teach our history. SCETV has curated a number of resources that highlight our history. So to sum up what I'm trying to build upon what has been shared, the resources are out there to teach our history. And I think what we also have to do is we have to take greater ownership in our community to ensure that our children are learning our history. It should not be really the primary responsibility of public schools because it's not going to happen there.
Right.
So now that we know that, what are we going to do to ensure? Because I'm suggesting if we really want to make certain that people are aware of our history, our people are aware of our history, then we have to teach our history. And if we're going to teach our history, we have to create spaces that have always been there to teach our history. Ergo, our churches, our Black churches, our community programs, community centers. We have to create these initiatives like we've done in the past. The blueprint is already there. Folks before us have done this already. So now we just have to pick up the mantle and continue the work. And as long as we continue that work, the children will be fine. And they will pick up the mantle and do the same.
Yeah, these are, I'm wondering why there are these attempts to stop us from teaching our history, and I think it has been really effective in the community for us to know our history, and that simply because of that, there's an attempt to stop us from learning about what we know and what we should know about our own culture. I agree. I mean, I think there are initiatives that we have to. There are places that we have to go, and the church is one institution, community centers and all and the like. But I think the church itself is the one primary space. But there are places like this, the show, There are other organizations that can teach us about what it is we know and what it is we should know about our own history. And I think that it's because it's been so effective. There's an attempt now just to just sort of blindside us and make our history just go away because it's a part of an agenda. I think we have a president and a political party that on one side is just simply trying to deny the validity of anything that's right. And whether it's Black history, American history, I think that there's an attempt. Not just an attempt. There are actions to just simply stop us from learning about who we are and what we do.
I appreciate what both of you have said. Let's not overlook the fact that this is a huge opportunity. The fact that they are, I'll use the word attack for lack of a better word, our compelling history and the things that we are constantly finding out about ourselves on a daily basis. The word April mentioned the fact that we should all unify with on celebrating Juneteenth on one day. So there was just so many organizations having it at the same time, and that, of course that dilutes the benefits of it. But I think, and I keep saying this, that this now that we're compelled, we're not up against our backs are not up against a corner, but we're more compelled now to further develop all necessary strategies and resources to make our history even much stronger. Because if there's ever been one thing that we've ever unified it on, it was our black legacy. Okay, and it's our history. Okay, we've been unifying in a way. The fact that we all embrace it when we had this, we gave us this month of February for Black History Month, but that's been changed in Black circles. Now, you got February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, Black History Month now. Okay, not African American History Month now. Sorry about that, Dr. Wright.
No problem. No problem.
Yeah. So I'll keep going off here, but yeah. So I think this is, we shouldn't lose sight on the fact that this is an opportunity to be well funded. We can get well funded because once we start unifying all about that, knowing that we're being attacked. Okay. Again, I'm still using that word. I mean, they want to take it out of our schools, but we can now present to our younger next generation a stronger Black history than what they had in the public schools. I mean, that was watered down anyway. Both of you should agree on that, I believe, right? I mean, that was watered down, especially after every day we're finding out things that we've never heard about before. On Black history. This is an opportunity. And even though we're talking about it as a topic, and I know, and we're generating comments about it, but I still don't want to overlook this. I mean, this is really a good opportunity.
Yeah, I think there should be. I think we have an opportunity to right now explain a little bit more about what Juneteenth is all about. Connect some of the history of African Americans. When I speak of wanting it to become a larger part of the American experience and American history, I'm not at all wanting to say that we shouldn't have Black history celebrations, that we shouldn't focus on the things, the contributions of Black people in specific ways for Black people. I just simply think that there's a larger conversation that we have to have. We have to make sure that we are seeing as part of the larger American experience.
Right.
And there are ways for us to do that and still celebrate specific days and specific events, and celebrate and acknowledge and explain to our community, the things, and talk about the contributions specifically of Black people. Because if we don't own it, then nobody else, they're not going to own it for us. But I think it's just important to connect it all in that conversation, if we talk about, for instance, I was just thinking about Memorial Day and how it came about, in Charleston with Black people celebrating, and not celebrating, but memorializing the death of Union soldiers. If we don't, we need to make sure that people understand that we know that there are things that we have done and contributed in this country that are a part of the larger conversation of the country. And so I'm not denying and I'm not saying that we shouldn't celebrate and acknowledge and have Black History Month celebrations and all. I'm just simply saying that we have to make the connection because America, as was said earlier, America is not America without the contributions of Black people. The things that we do and the contributions we've made, the music, the art, all of that has made America great. Everything that what Americans' greatness you can't separate the contributions of Black people. And so I think that it's important that we make that larger connection simply for that fact. And when people come to us saying that they are, why do we have to celebrate, and separate out, for Black people this holiday? We're celebrating these things as a part of American history. And that's where I'm coming from. That's why I think that it's important to make that connection. We do have the opportunity, and we should take the opportunity to let the young Black people and children that come up have to know where does they come from, and understand. We're not a part of a slave culture only. We are part of a culture of Africans and people who were kings and queens, and we celebrate great warriors. All of that is a part of who we are. We shouldn't just allow our history to be a part of just what happened to us in America. We're not just slaves, I should say, or we're not just slaves.
Brother Wright, I'm glad you brought those things up because I was hoping that we could share something about that. One, I would like to piggyback off of something that you shared with regard to Memorial Day. But before that, I think it's important to note that, like you've noted, this history of this country is not a full documentation of history without our history. Our contributions are integral to what has made this country great. You noting Memorial Day, the first Memorial Day was Black soldiers memorializing soldiers lost in the war. And that took place where? In Charleston, South Carolina. South Carolina has a peculiar history. To piggyback a little further, if we look at the importance of Juneteenth as a holiday, it is very significant. And I think it's also important that we note that Juneteenth emerged out of Galveston, Texas. Mm-hmm. And Texas was one of the last states to actually gain freedom. But if you really want to look a little bit more carefully, every state did not achieve independence at the same time. So there are multiple dates that we really can acknowledge in addition to Juneteenth.
Absolutely. Yeah.
If you want to look at South Carolina, for example, the first reading of the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st was in 1863 down in Port Royal in South Carolina. So when you look at that, people in this state, Black people, actually received independence in 1863 because down in Beaufort, those landowners left because those Union soldiers came in, leaving behind their homes and the enslaved people. And the enslaved people continued to follow the Union Army. And
Right.
the reading of the Emancipation Proclamation to declare that Black people would be free, which is a whole nother argument. I won't get into that today.
Yeah.
But it took place in South Carolina. So the importance of learning our history critically empowers our community. I'll give you one more example. In the Freedom School, we were talking today in our debrief, and some of our student leader interns who are college age teaching our youth, because we're building an intergenerational relationship so that the elders, my generation, the generation below me, and the scholars that are ages 6 and up, we learn from each other, we hear each other, and we build together so that everybody has a role and understand what the assignment is. And so that will help to preserve our history. But when we were talking, one of the student leader interns mentioned that in their class, they were reading about Claudette Colvin. And Claudette Colvin was a young lady around the age 14, 15, who actually sat on a bus in an effort to desegregate prior to Miss Rosa Parks. Now, it wasn't where folks such as Dr. King and others who were pushing the envelope to try to make it a national conversation, an initiative to desegregate public facilities and transportation, but she was pregnant and she was not married. So the concern became, would that be the storyline as opposed to what it was about? Now, to take it a step further, that really empowered our children because she was a youth, someone that was still in high school. They connected to her. They could relate to her, and now they can see themselves potentially doing something of that magnitude. Now, we layered it by talking to them, the students, about Sarah Mae Fleming Brown, Miss Sarah Mae Fleming Brown, who was a native of Eastover, South Carolina, who on June 22nd, 1954, 1 month after the Brown v. Board decision, was on Main Street in Columbia and decided to get on public transportation to go home. And she was asked to get out of her seat. She refused initially, and then later decided to get out and was assaulted. As a result, a court case came about. She actually won her court case. And this took place 17 months prior to Miss Rosa Parks. Now it's closer to home. Now they can say, oh, that's 2 hours from here. What else do we not know?
Sure.
And so,
a bunch.
So now we're opening their eyes to like, okay, well, what about the people in Horry County? What were they doing during this same time frame? Because when we leave it to others to teach our history, they only hit dates, a couple of names, and that's it. Whereas the people who have been the foundation of every movement that we have helped facilitate historically, these are the people that you never hear the names of. The people that actually are the grassroots organizers who are spreading the word, passing it off in the churches, making sure people are eating. How do they get out of jail? You got to raise money, and then you have to actually pay to get them out. Somebody's got to be able to get them from point A to point B. Somebody has to feed them. These are the people that they still don't know about, and they could be right in their community. People that have been a part of their family. And so it has inspired them in ways in which I don't even know if they know the magnitude of.
Sure.
So now it's a rabbit hole. And so
that's where we take up the mantle, man.
Yes.
I want to interrupt you, okay? That's where we take up the mantle. And again, that's an opportunity. Okay. Sure. I think from a capitalistic perspective and on. I think that this is an opportunity to satisfy all parties, all those dissenting parties who don't want us to have, for example, a black museum, or or for our black churches to be more engaging and having an entity within the black church. Each church, for example, in South Carolina or Horry County. My understanding is that there's 114 of them in Horry County. I don't know how that goes, but you can. But if each one had a room, dedicated to that, that's the way to picking up of the mantle, and that could be, for lack of a better word, I don't want to say profitable, but that's exactly what it is. Okay.
Yeah. One of the things that I have been thinking about with I left Coastal before, and I don't know, Dr. Goss, if you're involved with this, but when they started the Oral History Project, where I think there's a project at Coastal. I think I'm thinking of this right, where they're going around trying to capture the oral histories of African American people. If that's not the case, then I think something like that should be done. I think that I often think about some of the people that I grew up in this county that have history that could have informed me more, and I wish I was smart enough at some point to have talked to them. I think about the history and the things that I have learned from people just in talking. I think there's opportunity here for us to develop visual resources and audio resources like oral histories of people in Horry County. And like you say, there's a tremendous and rich history of events that happened in this particular county alone that connected to the schools, connected to the churches. If we had one of the ways to educate people, to let them know about our own history, and it doesn't have to be a physical museum, there's a website. And I think one of the things that I've talked about in the past with some folks is to possibly work with the county museum, for instance, and develop to gather images of African American history in Horry County and in Conway. To put that on a website and have you have to have someone curate that website to make sure that there's things that are proper and they're labeled and done the correct ways. But I think that is one way, gathering oral histories. The other way is to do a website where there's the history of Horry County, the Black history of Horry County, and again connect it to the larger history of this county. It was such a tragic thing to see the old Whittemore School, elementary school, go. And while that was lost, I think we have an opportunity to do something with the Whittemore School that's still there. But I mention all that because I think it's a part of our history that we don't want to get lost, or we don't want to allow to get lost. And if to answer the question as to what it is we can do, these are some of the things we can do. This program is one. We can develop web pages and websites. That if we don't have a physical museum, we can gather oral histories of people in the county, and that becomes an archive. We need to have it archived so that we can then therefore share it with people. And this is what we can do to highlight our own history within the county itself. As far as it's concerning the larger history of Juneteenth and all of that, sometimes we just have to do what we can do and do it the best that we can, and not worry about the problems that it might present, or worry about who doesn't believe in it. So I think that these are some of the things that I think we ought to do. For instance, in Horry County, to make sure that we have a understanding of our own history.
Well, I think that through this discussion, we have in more ways than one addressed or at least answered the question, why does Black history make so many people feel uncomfortable? And that can be applied in any community, any state, any region across this country. It can be applied across the world because, you know, our history is global history, really. And I think that, you know, a lot of the things that we shared tonight are definitely thought-provoking and are going to serve as the catalyst for some solutions, such as what you mentioned, Charles, and what you talked about, Dr. Gauze, in terms of the educational components. And I think the wheels are already turning for a lot of people. I'd like for us to kind of circle back to the question of how we should move as a people to be less reactionary when it comes down to those moments where we realize that people are uncomfortable, and to be more proactive so that we are ready with tough skin for those types of moments. But we're also preparing, you know, our children for those types of moments, because the reality of it all is that, you know, a few of us have probably had our own experiences with racism, but our children have yet to really understand that. And so, you know, part of the education is not only teaching them about our history, but also teaching them about how they should move and what they should do to protect their mindsets and their perspectives from things that are out there, people who are out there saying to us, your history does not matter, your history is not valid, your history is not a part of American history, the denial that's out there. So, you know, as we turn the corner to really answer the question, why does Black history make so many people feel uncomfortable? It's because of everything that we talked about today and all that we have left to do, and the implications of doing it, you know, the power that exists in terms of us as a people. And so now, as we deal with these uncomfortable situations, it sounds like the solutions that are presented are become more educated about the contributions, make yourself more aware of who you are as a Black citizen, who we are as a Black people, but also not necessarily turn a blind eye to what's being said and who's saying it, but we need to figure out how to harness that energy and turn it into, as you all said, an opportunity for us to either move past those things or to maybe even educate society as a whole. Because there are some people, you know, to be fair, who were definitely on the side of, yes, it's a valid celebration. It's something we should acknowledge. And when I say people, obviously the argument was between white and Black people on this thread. And so there were, you know, white individuals, white citizens who were like, you know, this is wonderful. It's great. We need to know this. And I think sometimes what makes them uncomfortable, the ones who choose to argue about it, is what they don't know, what they only can assume about us, or what's been taught to them. Because we all know that, I believe, racism is taught. I don't think any two individuals are born into this world racist. They're taught to be racist. So, you know, as we kind of move to the close of this conversation, if you could sum it up in a couple of words, your greatest takeaway from this conversation and your advice to the Black community on how to move through these moments, how to navigate these moments, and what needs to be done to make sure that our future includes educating ourselves more about our history. What are your thoughts?
Well, for me, I think sometimes you just have to know your history and be comfortable with it. And I don't think that sometimes you can address and deal with what other people are feeling about it. So I think it's just sometimes, for me, I'm not going to allow other people's displeasure or uncomfortableness with what it is that I know and what I want to share. It's important for me to focus on it and understand it, and then share it as much as I can. I don't have a solution for other people. That's just the way I deal with it. And if that helps someone else, you know, then people are always uncomfortable sometimes with what you have and what you can share to them. And so, just be solid in what you know and be comfortable in yourself and move forward.
Oh, boy, these words. Go ahead, Dr. Goss. I was about to say something.
I was going to say, you make some great points there, Brother Wright. And I believe that when thinking about how we can continue to embrace our history, even when folks are uncomfortable, a lot of our history is uncomfortable given what took place. But I think a point that Brother Wright made known also is that we can't start our history from the time we arrived here. And it's critically important that we expand beyond the time in which the transatlantic slave trade took place and get back to the original roots. That part is important as well because it allows us to see how we have historically been rooted into this world, not just from the time we made it to the Americas. Would that make people uncomfortable? Probably to some degree, but it also empowers us to see that we had a history long before we arrived at this country. And so our contributions go well beyond these borders. And so to move forward, our goal should be to continue to make certain that our history is being taught to our youth. And as Brother Wright noted, we have to document our history. Lots of families, whether they realize it or not, have very important documents that helps to preserve their family's history of the communities in which they live. And they may not be aware of that because it might be in a closet. Grandma might have been putting all of these newspaper clippings, these obituaries, these church programs.
Yeah.
All of that is a part of our history. That's how we can document what took place, where, and when. So sometimes those things get discarded, and it creates gaps in our history. But holding on to those things so that those things can be used as an archival collection to couple with those oral histories. Now you have someone telling the history, and you also have the artifacts that help to reinforce what actually happened. Because from a researcher's lens, you must be able to support what actually was shared, because people, as they get older, their memory is not the same as it was when they were younger. But here you have documents to support that. And so that helps to solidify and validate what they've shared as facts, so that whenever people try to question whether or not it's fact, you can speak from a point where you can justify. And so being able to document our history and making sure the young people are investing in that process as well. They have to be included in the oral histories. Let them interview grandma, auntie, somebody in the community. They got the technology. They've been born with it. They've always immersed themselves. Help them to make those TikToks so that they can be talking about their folks, and that'll get the history out, and it'll go viral. And then helping them to understand it's important for them to document the histories of the people right now, so that it continues the cycle. And so making sure that everybody is immersed in the process of documenting the history and preserving it, so that in the end, we have multiple avenues that we've actually traveled in order to preserve our history. And now we can teach it whenever we acknowledge those dates like Juneteenth, Black History Month. Black history is every day. So whenever you want to acknowledge it,
That's right.
you can do that. But you have the resources that's local, but also national.
Boy, when we start putting that on TikTok, you're talking about getting rid of TikTok now. Or then, which hasn't been done yet. But anyway, we're out of time, I believe. But this conversation, man, is so valuable. We're going to make it known that the value of it to our communities. And thank you two gentlemen. I'm sure I can speak for April too, that Dr. Wright and Dr. Goss, that to me, you've been invaluable. Dr. Goss, you brought us some things, man, that I really didn't know about Black history, but we'll talk about that another time. It was interesting. I didn't know about the young lady on the bus. That's everybody should know that. Okay, everybody should know that. So,
Well,
give
South Carolina does a great job of ensuring that you don't.
absolutely, yeah. I'll invite. Well, not invite, but I'll ask everybody to please take a trip to the Black Museum in Orangeburg. Give them Mr. Cecil Williams.
Huh.
You've never been there, obviously.
Never been.
Wow. Okay.
I can
Please
share
do.
another resource for you as well. In Columbia, there's there's three that I would highlight really quickly. Near the State House, there is an African American History Monument, which chronologues the history from Africa to the Americas as it relates to Africans coming in through Charleston. And there is 13 panels that kind of chronologues that history. So that's next to the State House. Second, in the Columbia Museum of Art, there is an exhibit of a photographer by the name of Richard Samuel Roberts, but it's also coupled with the Black Business District of Columbia, which highlights the history of Black life in Columbia at the Columbia Museum of Art. It's free. You can go in and see that. And then third, at the historic Booker T. Washington High School in Columbia, it's currently closed for the month of July for renovations because they're preserving the space. But in that building, there is an exhibit called Justice for All, and it chronologues the history of civil rights and Black life in South Carolina in that building. And it's a growing history. So I've helped to curate that exhibit. But
Wow.
what we aim to do is, as people see what's there, they also see what's not there. And so it helps us to build it out even further. And it's inclusive of cities around the state of South Carolina. So that's a way that has been promoted by the Center for Civil Rights History Research to help people understand, like, oh, when you see this flyer, yes, if you got flyers, please share so that we can actually expand this collection. And it's digital. I'd be happy to share the website in which you can actually see that collection if you do not make it to Columbia to see it.
All right. So what do you think, April? What you
I
got to
think
say?
this is, first of all, this has been a very powerful discussion.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I just want to thank both of you for your patience and for coming together tonight to have exactly what it is that we needed in order to understand more about ourselves and how to, like I said, navigate the tough moments that we all are facing and will continue to face. Black history is world history, and we definitely owe it to ourselves to learn more about our history and our foundations. And so thank you for being a part of that, for being a catalyst of so many questions and comments, and Dr. Goss for sharing 3 wonderful places that you can now visit that I didn't even know existed in Columbia. And so I just thank you all for your time tonight, and thank you to all of our viewers and commenters. Hopefully you've gained a lot from this, and you'll want to come together and create some movement. We've had viewers from all up and down this East Coast and the region today. And I'm sure that this history is going to go much farther than this hour and 20 minutes here on this show. So now we may tap y'all again for some other topics. So just know you're in rotation now. You're officially in rotation. And Dr. Goss, please continue to do the amazing work that you're doing at CCU with Call Me Mr. program. I'm glad that you're heading that up. Sounds like it's in really good hands. Yep. And Dr. Wright, thank you for just being a willing participant. We really do appreciate both of you this evening. Yes, to those of you who viewed the broadcast tonight, thank you so much for all of your comments and your questions. And please share this broadcast. It is available on YouTube. It'll be on wcmagazine.net for the next week until we, of course, roll in our next guest. And of course, it's on our Facebook pages, on the World Community Magazine page. And if you are a personal friend of mine, you can definitely see it on my page. But just want to thank everyone. And Brother Edward, I don't think we have our guest confirmed for next week. But as always, we're here 7 p.m. on Tuesday nights. with great conversations, hot topics, empowering information. And so we just thank you all for your support.
Absolutely. Thank
Thank
you all.
you.
And
Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
the
you so much. And everyone have a good night.
good night.
Thank you.
Godspeed.
Thank you for watching the World Community Magazine's Hour of Power Live on Facebook.